What is going on, investors? Hopefully you guys are having a great day out there. Time to talk about one of the most followed stocks in the stock market, and that is Microsoft Corporation, ticker symbol MSFT. They just reported earnings after the bell today, and spoiler alert, they were absolutely spectacular. So we'll talk about those. We'll jump into the numbers. We'll look at these. We'll talk about why companies like Microsoft and Apple and Google, why these companies just continue to do well year after year. And it's right here in really just plain black and white. So if you can understand reading these financials, it just gives you a really clear sense why these stocks just continue to perform well over time. Now, what we also talked about last Friday, every Friday here on the channel, we talk about all the FAANG stocks plus Microsoft plus Tesla. And we talked about how all these stocks were just ready to explode this week because of earnings, just from a technical perspective and probably a fundamental perspective as well. Microsoft delivered on the fundamentals, and now the technicals have popped this into a range. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Now, from a valuation perspective, this stock's actually been even more elevated. I've got a 3-year chart here. We're sitting at a 37 PE. Okay, maybe overvalued, depending on what metrics you're kind of following, but in this sense, not grossly overvalued when you factor in 2018. This stock was trading even higher than that, at least from a price to earnings basis. Now, what I want to show you here is just Microsoft is just hitting it out of the park with all their product lines. We've got Office Commercial, Office 365, LinkedIn. Take a look, LinkedIn, 23%. Just Azure, 50%. Xbox, 40%. I mean, everything. I mean, some of this stuff is small, small gains, but this is just absolutely phenomenal growth across all their product lines. Now, obviously, it's going to be representative when we jump into the numbers here. So we've got product revenue here. This is the most recent 3 months ended here, and then they have 6 months. This was a Q2 for Microsoft, so you get a 6-month view here. We're basically flat on the Q2. On the product side, also from a 3-month, that's basically flat. It's up marginally. Okay, service though, look at this. We were 18 billion up to 23 billion over the last 6 months. We've gone up about $9 billion, not 9 million, $9 billion. Total revenues went from 36 to 43 billion. Okay, there's companies that won't do that in a decade. Microsoft does $43 billion in revenue in a quarter. Not a year, in a quarter. Take a look here. For 6 months ended, we did $80 billion. That's about $11 billion more than the previous 6 months. Now, here is where the magic is with Microsoft. This is why this stock just continues to run, and why, in my opinion, you can just buy this stock. You don't necessarily have to pay attention to a whole lot other than this. Take a look. We spent $14 billion to make $43 billion. So off $43 billion of revenue, we made $29 billion in gross margin. There is very few, you can count on one hand the amount of companies in existence that do this, especially one that's been around as long as Microsoft, 20, 30 years, however long they've been around. They've been around a long time. Take a look for the 6 months. We made $80 billion. We spent a measly $25 billion, and we grossed out $55 billion in 6 months. They're on pace to do well over $110 billion for the whole year in gross margin. Now, they've got to pay other stuff. Look, we've got research and development, we got sales and marketing, we got general and administrative, but take a look. These are minuscule. These are almost like pennies. So off 43, we spent another 14 to earn that revenue, and then we spend these costs here. So our operating income ends up being for the quarter $17.9 billion. A lot of companies, this might be their revenue for the year. This is operating income for a quarter for Microsoft. You see, in the previous quarter, we did about 14 billion. And over the last 6 months, we went from 26 billion. Again, this is operating income, not operating revenue. This is income, $33 billion. It's essentially profit. We can come down here to the net income side, and we see we did 15 billion in profits. That's way over 11 billion. And we did about 30 billion in 6 months. That's way over. I mean, this is just unbelievable. $2.03 in earnings, $3.85. So when you come back here and look at Microsoft's dividend, we pay $2.24 for the year. So for every share of Microsoft, you're getting $2.24 per year in the stock. And so you see, they basically earn that in a quarter. Okay, for the last 6 months, we've made $3.85. So just phenomenal, just phenomenal. I don't need to go through the cash flows. I don't necessarily need to go through the balance sheet. When you have this spectacular of operating income and growth, trust me, everything else is going to look spectacular. So what we're going to do is jump over to the stock chart. So this stock is, wow, whoa, it's way up here right now. So this stock is popping. I'm going to draw a line in so you guys can see where this one is. That's where this one is. And so this one popped. Just like we talked about on our Friday show, these stocks were ready to pop, and sure enough, Microsoft did it. I would not surprise me at all if Apple, Tesla, and the rest kind of follow suit over the next couple weeks. Facebook as well. These stocks just technically look great, and fundamentally everything's set up for a pop. So now here's where we're at. Do you come in here and buy if you want? A long-term perspective, that's fine. I don't necessarily know how much further upside when you get these big pops in these stocks, how much further they'll run until they kind of consolidate. But I would expect some consolidation up in this range from call it 233, 234 up to, it could probably come all the way up to 245 or so. Somewhere in this range, I'd like to see this one consolidate a little bit. We're going to have to come in here and reevaluate this one from a technical perspective because we're basically in uncharted territory with this one. If the economy keeps rolling forward, you get stimulus, stuff like that happens, well, this one could continue this momentum. We're definitely in a shorter term uptrend, but the stock has been in uptrends and then it tends to pull back. So I'd wait for some kind of pullback. You'd have support likely right here in this 240 range. It's tough when these stocks pop. That's why you want to be on these before this happens. And that's what we try to do on our Friday show. So if you're not a subscriber to the channel, maybe check that show out. We go over these stocks on a weekly basis because, boy, they just set up perfectly and then boom, they pop. I mean, you could have made, that's over about $10 a share just over the last days, let alone if you would have picked it up a few weeks ago when we were talking about it as well. So Microsoft performed beautifully. This is really all you need to know. All their product lines are just absolutely phenomenal. And the ones that are really high margin, like this Azure one, are growing at a 50% clip. Absolutely phenomenal. So that's Microsoft. We'll be back on Friday to talk more about it and talk a little bit about the news, maybe dissect what happens on the conference call, maybe some of the guidance they give as well. But for now, that's it with Microsoft. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Good luck with your investments.